Yeah, but I'm taping for the PMI virtual experience series next week. So that'll be exciting.
Oh, are you really? Well, that's good.
It'll be in the June 9th. It
June
comes
9th,
out.
yeah. No, I work with the owners of those, with Gina Alessi and Julie Ho.
Mm-hmm.
They only pick the best people, so you should be honored that you got picked.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they were excited about the content to include it. So I think it's
good.
It'll be good to help people. Yeah,
we get a big crowd for that. I mean, last time we had 63,000 people signed up for that. Yeah, so it'll be a good response for you.
Yeah, I remember both you and Andrea were there, right?
Yes, we were
chatting back and forth.
Absolutely. I don't go anywhere without Andrea.
How did you two meet?
We haven't met.
Well, I guess virtually, yeah.
Yeah, virtually.
Yeah,
virtually is good enough. I mean, really.
Yeah, I surprised Lee. I didn't know about his event in my area until the very last minute. It was already sold out, and they're like, we can't accommodate anyone else, but I just showed up anyway, hoping I could get in, and luckily they let me in. So
they sneaked in. I thought I was being accosted by somebody. She had a mask on, and I didn't recognize her. And then, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous there.
Who is this person that pretends that they know me, but I don't recognize them?
Yeah. She said,
who's this person that's so excited to meet me? Is this one of my raving fans that I need to call the police on?
Yeah, really. Call the cops. That was a pleasant surprise, I must say.
Yes, because I guess, I knew and I was excited, but I totally caught you off guard. So next time I'll give you a little bit more warning.
Okay. Yeah, I'll count on that.
Yeah. But you come back to Montgomery County pretty regularly to speak?
It used to be more regular. It used to be probably 6 times a year. I'd be out there for some chapter. But of course, with COVID, that kind of went away. So it'll pick back up again. But I'm kind of tired of that place. I've seen it, been there, done that. So I'm trying to get to some new spots this year.
Like the Bahamas.
Andrea's going to get me over to the Bahamas. Yeah, she's promised me that she'll do that. So I'm kind of waiting for that invitation to come through.
Yes. I told her that should be an easy sell. So.
Oh, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. Who would not want to go? When I tell people I'm speaking to a group in the Bahamas, they're like, so are you going? I'm like, no.
Yeah, I know. I thought the same thing the first time I spoke for her, and then she said, no, sorry, you're not coming here. I don't think she trusts me over there.
I don't think you'll go back.
That's probably true. I'll find a place to stay and just stay there.
So everyone else who's joining us, who has entered the room, we officially start in a few seconds. Just enjoying some friendly banter until we get started. So if you want to come on camera, you can. If you don't want to come on camera, that's fine too. The meetup will be recorded. I did not know it was recording. So we will record the meetup and post it on our YouTube channel at a later date. Okay, according to my clock, it says 6:00 p.m. So in good old project management fashion, and to stay true to our profession as project managers, we start on time. Right, Mr. Lambert?
That's right. We don't know when we'll end, but we start on time.
So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, wherever you were joining us from, whatever time it is. I am Andrea Pratt-Smith, the founder of the Bahamas Agile and Project Management Community, and I will serve as your host for this meetup. And part of my team is here now, Omar Gonzalez. He's going to be doing our technical support and any assistance we need in the background. And a few others will be joining us later on before this meetup concludes. And our special co-host for this evening, Mr. Lee Lambert, is going to be co-hosting with me as a surprise for our speaker, Hilary. She did not know that Mr. Lambert was going to be here and that he was going to be our co-host.
Very exciting. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, great to have you as my co-host, Mr. Lambert. To give you a little bit of background of those of you who may not know, Lee Lambert is one of the founders of the PMP credential, and he is a founder, am I saying this correct? Of the PMI, one of less than 50, is it 48?
70 fellows, PMI fellows, 70.
70? Last time I think we spoke, it was like less than 50, or my memory is not serving me well.
That's possible. My memory didn't.
Okay, so it's less than 70. So that's an exclusive club. And someday he's going to tell us the secret how we can all become founders and part of the exclusive project management institute community. I know it takes a lot of volunteering because Lee volunteers everywhere and he speaks all over the world. And every time you see him, he's presenting somewhere else. So I know it takes a lot of dedication and passion and commitment to servant leadership. And for that, that's why he's so well known and so loved in our project management community. So we're going to officially start our meetup with a word of prayer. So if you can join me, heads bowed, eyes closed. Heavenly Father God, we thank you for this opportunity to have another meetup as the Bahamas Agile and Project Management community. We know that it is your will that we are accomplishing. We know that everything that is done and said here is to bring you honor and glory. We thank you for those who are in attendance and those who are on their way. Lord, we thank you for our presenter. May you graciously give her the words to say so that we can enjoy what is going to be presented to us. Lord, we thank you for Mr. Lee Lambert and his presence here. And we thank you for just another opportunity to praise you and to do your will. We ask that you continue to be a blessing to our community, that you would open up doors for us that we cannot open ourselves, and that you continue to bless us with your grace, favor, and mercy. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. So, my co-host, Mr. Lambert, do you want to start us off with an icebreaker so that we can get to know all of the dark boxes on our screen that's off camera?
Yeah. The icebreaker would simply be kind of discussing a little bit about the author that we're going to hear from tonight. The funny thing is, I met Hilary by trying to sell her something. I was selling memberships in a mastermind group, and I got talking to her, trying to convince her to spend some money and get smart like some of the other people that I work with. And instead, she turned it around on me and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm writing a book about project management." I thought, well, that's unusual. What's it about? And she said, "It's about parents." I said, "Parents, what's that got to do with project management?" She said, "Well, everything." And so I said, "Well, let me read the book. And if I like what it says," I said, "I'd love to endorse it." I said, "I think the idea sounds very intriguing." And so she sent me a copy of the manuscript. It was not done yet, but it was getting pretty darn close. And I spent a couple days reading through it. And when I was all done, I thought, my gosh, this is a winner. This is going to hit the market with something that's not been done before. And taking her experience from Ritz-Carlton, happened to be a Ritz-Carlton member, so I stay at those resorts all the time whenever I can get it free. And she's certainly been responsible for some very significant projects in the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain. And that's kind of where she cut her teeth on project management. And then she was able to take that and transition it into the application in a family orientation. So the book is just really outstanding. I've recommended it to everybody I can think of. And as I see how well it's doing in the marketplace and see the comments that have come in, she's definitely got a winner, and Hilary knows what she's talking about. That's the scary thing. She didn't bluff this thing. She actually knows what she's talking about. I haven't talked to her kid, so I don't know if he would agree or not. But evidently, it's working for them. And project management for parents. What a great concept and a great attitude to develop with your children. So take a look at that. Listen to what she has to say tonight. I think you're going to be very interested in that. So let me introduce Hilary Kinney, our guest speaker for tonight.
Thank you so much, Lee. I really appreciate it. That was very sweet of you. Yeah, this book was not planned. It is a outcome of the pandemic silver lining. And I started writing it because I've been working at Marriott and Ritz-Carlton for many years for most of my project management career. And, we're hospitality. So I was laid off in April of, 2019. And I started seeing all these posts from parents, and, my son's school closed, and, my husband was working from home, and for a period I was working from home, and just all that work that needed to happen at home at the same time. And seeing other parents struggling with the same thing, I just started thinking, I was like, this feels like work. I've got this big project. I've got a lot to do. I don't have enough people to help me. I don't have enough resources, and I don't have enough time. And it just felt very familiar, sort of the situation I was in. And it just started as a LinkedIn article that I posted called Project Management for Parents. And that was in May of 2019. And then that turned into a speech at International Project Management Day that November. And that turned into a book deal. So it's just been kind of this like snowball that keeps getting bigger. So it's been a super interesting process, but it sort of like married my two worlds. Like I was a project manager first, and then I became a parent later in life. And it's kind of a combination of those two worlds of mine. So it's been sort of a fun little side project of mine. Now I'm back at Marriott. So now, I'm juggling all those balls in the air. But I'm glad I had the time during the pandemic to work on it. So God's timing is good, and he allowed me the time to get it done. And now I can go back to work to doing project management, which I really enjoy.
You're on mute, Lee. Lee, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll be able to hear you in just a minute. Now, Hilary, I was asking, how long did you actually spend, would you estimate, in hours in writing this book?
Let's see. So I probably started writing it. I don't know if you know Judy Umlis of International Institute of Learning. She leads the whole Grateful Leadership initiatives. You'll see us speaking at a lot of their events. Because I reached out to her, I said, Judy, I have this idea. It seems to be, people seem to be interested in. Do you think it could be a book? Because she had written books, and so I wanted to get her insight. And she said, Hilary, well, why don't you just write the introduction, the first chapter, and the table of contents, and see what you think? Because I just didn't know if there was enough there. It was a one-page LinkedIn article. And so she tasked me with that. So I probably started doing that in, maybe June or July. And then in true project management fashion, my husband and I worked out our schedule. So I would work in upstairs on the book from, 9 or 8 till 11:30. And then I would watch my son and help him with school. So it was probably 4 hours a day for, I don't know, maybe 9 months.
Wow.
And then I had to submit the manuscript in February, and then it goes through the whole editing process, which is a whole nother ball of wax, and the graphics. So yeah, I haven't calculated the hours, but then there were a lot of weekends. I actually injured my shoulder writing the book. So be careful, watch your posture, because I impinged a tendon on my shoulder writing the book. You got those deadlines you got to meet from the publisher. But yeah, we made it work, and it worked out pretty well, because I could, my husband could still work, and I could get this done, and then we could both support my son while he was doing remote learning. So yeah, it was definitely a project in itself to get it done.
Did your husband read it and review it for you?
Oh yeah, my husband's a professional editor.
Oh my word. You had a bogey going in.
Right, exactly. So he's an editor for US News and World Report. So he was my developmental editor. But he hears me talk about it all the time. So he already has some knowledge of project management. So I wanted someone who doesn't have that knowledge to read it, just so to make sure it made sense. So I got a regular editor to read it, to do the next round of edits. And then I had a proofreader go through it, and then, beta readers to see, what they were interested in. And it was interesting because when I started out being a project manager, I started out very task oriented. And I briefly alluded to sort of the whole teamwork piece. And all the parents I sent it to, they said, tell me more about this teamwork piece. And there was just a huge amount of interest in that. So I said, well, okay, let me focus on that. So then I built out the first part of the book more on teamwork and getting that in place first. And I had to simplify it because some of the early feedback was it's just too technical. So I had to take a step back out of my project management brain and think of just like an everyday reader and make sure that they could, access the information and use it. So yeah, it's all part of that iterative process, right? Get early feedback on your project, get the customer input, and make adjustments as necessary to make sure that the end result is going to work.
That was kind of my concern when I first thought about it. I felt like it was necessary to kind of dumb it down so that project management wasn't really the centerpiece, that some of the concepts were the centerpiece, but the family was really what you were wrapping around it, because it clearly makes sense that the same concepts work on running a family as they do running a project. So when I finally read it, I even understood it. So I thought that was pretty good.
Well, right. When you think about it, I use project management in hospitality. Other people use it in IT. People use it in healthcare. They use it to build, nuclear reactors. So just like we do in project management, we can translate that outside of business into everyday life. So I love project management. It's so powerful. I just think there's a lot of application there that isn't being used just in the everyday world, because we use it every day. And we kind of think that way. And one thing I love is once people who aren't project managers read the book or just understand the framework, they're like, oh, I can't not see it now. And then they say, oh, now I look at things in a different way, and I can break them down, and I can, analyze it a little more and think through the process. So that's the thing I love about project management is you just use the same framework for, different things. And that's what makes it so valuable is you can just keep repurposing it once you learn it. It's a tool you can use at home, at work, at school, just in so many different areas.
I think you and I have some common knowledge, because I've felt that way since well before you were born. But we look at this, and it's basically what I say is everything's a project and everyone's a project manager. So I think that, to me, that really applies. Everything we do falls into the category of some form of a project, whether it's scheduling your vacation or whatever it is. If you sit down and do it, now, sometimes we don't call them things like work breakdown structure. We call them lists, but we make lists of things that have to be done. And now what we've learned is that there are some sequential operations that have to be taken into consideration about what comes first and what comes second. So those kind of things are easy to adapt to almost any situation. So I think you've hit on a real winner here in terms of adaptability to the real environments that we all live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you just think about your kids, right? Like their skills, if you can teach them early that they can use in school, they can use them when they go to college. Because I hear a lot of kids struggle when they go from elementary to middle school. At least here in the States, there's a big jump. You go from one teacher to 7 or 8 teachers, and you got to keep track of all your different courses because it's all split out. And just that organization skill to be able to organize all that on their own. I just think there's a lot of value for kids. And teaching those skills early can really set them up for success. And it's interesting, like my own son, like I see in him, he'll plan out his day. Like he'll talk out loud and be like, okay, I've got to get the stuff on my list done, which is like his chores. And then he's like, oh, and then I'm going to have my screen time. And then I'm going to go outside with my friends. So he just kind of starts planning out his day, figuring out when he needs to get stuff done. And you can see him developing those skills already. which is great to equip him for the future.
Yeah, and I think your son's 10, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that they can start that young. I think that we need to have our kids think more logically in terms of planning their day or planning their activities. And BMI now, Project Management Institute now is making a big push to have an impact on the youth environment. So they're actually starting programs specifically targeted to creating this environment where kids can learn about project management. I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's so useful. And just breaking it down for them. Like I asked my son, I was like, all right, what's a tough thing at school for you? And he said, writing an essay is hard because there's so many different components. So, we can just help him break it down into those little smaller pieces. Like, okay, let's come up with the title. Let's come up with the opening sentence. Let's come up with the first paragraph, the closing paragraph, and then do one paragraph at a time and just chunking it out for them so he doesn't get overwhelmed and knows where to start. And just building those skills early really helpful. And then the other benefit is interesting is the research that shows that it helps decrease stress levels and anxiety. So teaching these planning skills not only helps them perform better, but it helps them feel better because they feel better equipped and they're not stressed out about school. So I think there's just a whole slew of benefits that can be achieved just by learning these skills.
Do you have a specific time that when you and your husband and your child sit down together, kind of like an agile stand-up meeting on a regular basis, or is that kind of ad hoc?
When he was doing remote school, we would actually have to do it twice a day. So we would do it in the morning to talk about the day and our schedules. And if my husband and I had any meetings, then we'd do a recap at the end of the day. So when we were juggling a lot more at home, we would do it twice a day. Now it's more ad hoc. We check in and ask how things are doing. And it's neat because my son definitely, offers his opinion and he's really good at problem solving and offering solutions. And I think part of that is the result of involving him in these, ongoing conversations about how things are going and doing the family check-in meetings. And then especially if we're about to implement something new or if there's a big change happening in the family, we'll do it more often. Like at the beginning of school, just checking in, how's the schedule? And even just between my husband and I, like, how's the pickup drop off schedule doing? Do we need to adjust anything? Jacob, how's your school going? Do you need, how's your class? How's your backpack working out? Just little things to check in more often. But now we do it more ad hoc because we don't have anything big new happening.
How much screen time does he get with computer games?
He gets 1 hour a day during the week and 2 hours a day on the weekends.
Very good. So you do have a time set aside.
Yeah. So he has to work that into his schedule and he gets that after he finishes his homework and chores.
Good. Very good.
So he knows how to, organize. So that's the sort of organization process he has to go through in his head. But now that the weather is warmer, he wants to go outside and play with his friends. But if he goes outside with his friends too long, then he has less screen time because he runs out of time. So he has to
eats against the screen time.
So he's got to do the trade-off. Do I want to go play with my friends for longer or do I want to have screen time? So he's starting to, have to make decisions and trade-offs for his decision making. So it's interesting. It's fun to see his little brain work.
Yeah, I can see that. What about now? I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, so I know she's got some things too. If you had to pick one thing that's been beneficial from the book, what would it be?
I would say, I'm going to cover this in my presentation, but just applying the project management theory of constraints to family life. That's resonated a lot with people and just how to manage your family schedule. Because, I think culturally, at least in the States, it's always about how much can I get done. But the project management theory of constraints, we manage to our limits. So I think it makes us think in a different way and helps us be a lot more realistic about what we can do and protect the things that are important to us. So I think that's the thing well, there are a lot of things I'm excited about, but that's my favorite project management theory. And I'm excited to share it with you because I think it's really valuable and will be a good way to think through how to plan your schedule in a way that works for each individual family.
Now, last thing, has Marriott been very supportive?
Yeah, I did a speech to my division when the book came out, and they give me a flexible schedule so I can do my book stuff on the side. So yeah, they're very supportive.
Very good. Andrew, you want to take over? I'm sure you have some things to say.
Yes, thank you so much, Lee. Hilary, before we get started with your presentation, I just want to give the persons who entered the room a quick chance to say whether this is their first time here, where are they joining us from. So we'll put a minute on the clock. That's the cue for Omar. So if there's anyone here joining us for the first time.
Hey,
Hi, everyone.
go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adeyemi Lawrence Additional. I'm a project manager. I'm joining you from Mississauga in Ontario, Canada. And this is my first time joining the Bahamas group. I met Andre at the last session of this, I think, Global Agile Scrum.
Global Scrum Gathering.
Oh, yeah, in Nigeria.
Nigeria. Oh,
yes.
Yeah,
and I'm a Nigerian. Yeah. So I hold some project management certification. I've worked in the industry for quite a bit. I used to work for financial industry here. Now I'm into food distribution and all that industry right now. And I'm looking at taking a new engagement now. So I'm networking. I belong to Lakeshore chapter in Toronto as my project management, group.
Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else join us for the first time?
This is Jeff Clements. Oh.
You can go ahead.
Okay, yeah, real quick. Jeff Clements. I'm in Wesley Chapel, Florida, West Central Florida. I have Scrum Master, PMP, ACP. Been worked with Verizon for 38 years. Retired, worked somewhere else for 2 years. Came back to Verizon. So, yeah, I appreciate your time and letting me join. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Kelly.
Hello, Kelly Foster. This is my first time. I'm from Bowie, Maryland, and I am a Lee Lambert fan follower. And had the pleasure of chatting with Hilary a couple months ago. So thanks for having me here.
Good to see you.
Good to meet you, Kelly. You're part of the Lee Lambert fan club. I'm his best bestie, so you're second best bestie. All right, Carlene.
Hi, I'm Charlene. This is my first time here as well. I recently also joined. I got my Scrum as well. Originally from New York, residing in New Jersey, working for IVCI. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else joining us for the first time?
Yeah, Andrea, I am Tom Vasquez. I'm out of Fort Lauderdale right now. I am a PMP Scrum Master as well. Mostly came up through the military, did some defense acquisitions, and I'm working now for a city. And so in finance at this point. So looking forward to hearing this very intriguing topic. And I work with the youth on weekends, and this is why. So it's a natural marriage for me to apply the principle. I've kind of been doing it pseudo, just off the cuff, working with youth on the weekend. And so I just can't wait to hear what we got to say here. And thank you for having me.
Okay, that's great. Thomas, what type of youth work do you do?
With our local church.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that's great. I'm a commander with the Royal Rangers Boys Club. I've been serving there for 20 years.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
So Dave, you're up. For some reason, we can't hear you, but you're not saying it's on mute.
How about now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Sorry. New laptop. All the settings are not quite there yet. So my name is Dave Kukachka, and I'm also at Wesley Chapel. So Jeff. That's an odd thing out of all the people that probably try to sign up. But currently, I am a subcontract manager at Lockheed Martin, and I'm a recently new Scrum Master. So I'm just kind of trying to get my feet wet, getting into it. And I also have 2 kids. I got a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old. So this topic definitely resonated when I saw it. I was like, yes, because that's a huge range of like how to kind of get the motivation and organization between a 4 and a 14-year-old. So it's fun. So yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, well, Dave, you think that's a big gap. Try 10 and 25-year-old. So anyone else new?
Hi, my name is Elise Cardona. I'm from Orlando, Florida. I recently got my Scrum Master as well, and I'm holding my 6-month-old as I watch this. So this was very intriguing for me as well. And the same, just trying to get my feet wet and, gain some more education. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and all of our newcomers. If you didn't get a chance to speak, but you'd like us to know where you're joining us from, and if this is your first time, please type it in the chat. But just for time's sake, we're going to allow Hilary to start her presentation so we can have a chance at the end for question and answers. And also, we'd like to take a picture before we leave, and we will drop the link for the Scrum Education Unit in the chat at the end of the meeting, for those of you who are joining us as Scrum Alliance members. So Hilary, you can start your presentation. You have share rights.
Great, thank you. I will get that set up. So my goal today is to, let me just get this set up, provide you with some key tips that you can take away with you right away so that you can, sorry, let me just adjust this. So that you can have some things that you can take away with you immediately and put into place at home. Because we all know parenting is a tough job, and we all need tools to do it. And thank you so much for your time today. And I really hope that you find this valuable. And because parenting is a roller coaster, right? And there's a lot to do, and it's hard for us to stay on top of it. So let me just adjust something here. There we go. So parenting is a roller coaster, and it's up and down with the different kids' ages. They go through different phases very quickly. From young to old, it seems like when you get to used to one age, they transition to something different. And then just, we live in a very volatile world that we've learned in the last few years with the pandemic. So these tools are especially helpful for that too. And just as we continue in our parenting journey, and just in life in general, how can we handle things as they come up? So I'm going to run you through 4 different topics that are topics from my book. There are a few more in the book on organization, but this focuses a lot on the people side of the projects, because in families, we focus more on the people. We're going to talk about how to create family champions, how to stop feeling overwhelmed and focus on your priorities, and that's that constraints part that I alluded to earlier. How to proactively manage risk, which can be super helpful to think about those things that could happen and how to be ready for them when they come and reduce our stress around them. And then finally, a focus on agile and how to focus on what's important and what principles from that methodology can we apply to our lives at home. So to get started, I like to think about project management as people plus processes. And at work, we tend to focus more on the processes and the work and how we get it done. But there's always people involved. We can't get the work done without the people. And the processes are there to help the people get that work done. So I like to think about those as the combination of the two. And we'll go into that in more detail as we start off talking about first, how to create those family champions. And that was that feedback I got when I was writing the book, is a lot of families were really interested in how do I really build that teamwork in my own family to help us work together and feel like we're one solid team. And at work, we do this, right? You have a new project team. You may go out for lunch. You may do a fun activity at Marriott. They seem to enjoy axe throwing. So we go do that. We've gone sailing. We go bowling. And it's a great way to get to know each other and build those relationships. So let's just talk about how to set up your family for success in the long run and build that foundation for any project going forward. And one thing that I'm a big proponent of is engaging the entire family in the process. So like you see in this picture, the whole family would be involved to build that teamwork and ultimately succeed together. And what I like to start with is, before you dive into an individual project, is think about your overall family mission and start talking that through. Just like with any business, business has vision statements and mission statements. And it helps set the tone for everyone to know what the North Star is. And as a family, it's important to have those conversations to set the expectation and also get the input of everyone and what they're interested in. And a good example of this would say there's two families that are coming together as a blended family. They both had two different family experiences before, but they're coming together as one family. And how can they set the family up and learn how to sort of literally work together in this new family environment? So there are different few ways you can go about this depending on the age of your children. Again, engage the entire family in the process from the young to old. I mean, the little kids could do little things like draw pictures or cut out pictures from magazines. If you have teenagers, you can engage them in more detailed questions like these, like what words best describe our families? What do we love to do? What values do we want our family based on? And what helps us do our best? And get that conversation going of what kind of environment you want to create in your own family. And then also talk about, behaviors. How should we behave when we have a fight? How should we treat each other? And just talk through those more difficult situations and what you can do when those happen, so that you have a North Star. And what my family did is we had lots of good intentions of, getting an Etsy engraved vision of our family mission. But, we didn't have enough time and we ended up buying one online, and that is fine. If you see something that resonates with your family, we bought one online. It's related to scripture verses, and it's posted in our dining room. And we talk about it over dinner. We will refer to one about being honest and talk through what that means. So it's a great way just to refresh it and keep it front and center for the whole family. And then if there's a circumstance of something of, my son not being honest or something happened at school, we can refer back to that and give the example of why that's different than what our family mission is and set the expectation for the future. So now that you have that sort of overall mission, let's talk about team building and what are the benefits of that. So again, it's sort of getting to know each other outside of that day-to-day routine and providing opportunities to connect in a way that may not otherwise be possible. And it's a way of learning to work together on something that's a little more enjoyable than the chores, and sort of learning your quirks and, ins and outs. When my son was little, I took more care of my son. My husband worked more, so they didn't have as much of a connection or less of a understanding. My husband had less of an understanding of sort of my son's quirks. But the more time they spent together, I really encouraged them to spend more time together so they could understand each other better. And we love to go camping, so we do camping and hiking. And it's a great way to feel connected as a group and also start building those shared experiences and memories. And it's also really helpful for those older children, like teenagers, who may not be communicating with you as much anymore. But it provides an opportunity when you're doing something together to open up those lines of communication and gives them opportunity to share with you and may bring up more things that they will share with you than they would in a different environment. And I encourage people to try to do something together at least once a month as a family and do that consistently. And then this is where we get to the family check-in meetings that we were talking about before. Now that you have that overall, vision and mission of your family, you've got those activities going, so you're building those bonds. To keep those communication lines open and that engagement going, have those family check-in meetings and just touch base on what's happening, how things are going. You can be done over dinner, to keep it simple. If you want to have a more formal meeting, that's fine too. But ways to frame it up, it's basically like work. We have weekly, project team meetings, right? What did we do? What are we going to do? What do we need support with? So you can frame it up as what works well this week, what did not work well this week, and what are we going to do next week? If you have little kids that may not understand that, you can relate it to a rose. So what worked well would be a beautiful flower. What did not work well was a thorn. Like, what was the thorn in your week? And what will we work on next week would be a little flower bud. So what do you want to focus on that? So that's a good way to just to keep that engagement and that communication going. That's so important. And that's one of my things that I think, I'm just at work and at home, communication is so key. I always say at work that projects live and die on communication. And this is a great way to keep those lines open and also build those executive function skills in your kid by engaging them in the conversation and that problem solving. And they start thinking through and they start building those skills too. So now what I want to talk about, now that you've got your team built, I want to talk about change because we've had so much change going on in our world and our families. And a lot of people are struggling with change. And I think we're all a bit overwhelmed by all the change that's been happening in the world. So I want to dive in about change and how can we support our families as we go through that, because it has been a roller coaster and it'll probably continue to be a bit of a roller coaster. So first of all, let's talk about what is change. So change can be a lot of things, right? It can be hopeful, it can be promising, it can be exciting, but it can also be a little scary. It's different, it can be hard. And it's also a bit of a loss, right? Because anytime something is changing, we're going from something that is known to something that is unknown. So we have to give something up to get to this new place. And that requires a transition from one to the other. And that transition is a loss, right? You're losing what you know and you're moving to something new. And that loss can trigger some big emotions. And I want to talk about that because it's important to be aware of. We talk about change management at work. It can be a little more technical. And we talk about supporting people through that change. But at home with little kids, those emotions can be a little bit bigger. They can manifest in tantrums or bigger emotions. And some of those emotions are similar to that grief response. So I just want us to talk about it. So if we see it, we can recognize it and know what it is, and then we can help support them in the process. So some of those emotions, like say your family is moving to a new town where your kids, have to leave all their friends, change schools. That's a big change for them. So they may first deny that it's even happening. They may be angry and dispute it. We don't need to move. We can stay here. You don't need to get that new job. They may bargain for it not to happen. Let me live with Aunt Sue down the road. I don't need to move with the family. They may become sad or depressed over the change, and that is totally normal. And then eventually they may accept the change. So our goal is to support them through the process and try to, as parents, help them as we go through big changes. And another useful context for change is to think about change capacity. And think about how complex is the change, what's the personal impact, how quick is the change, and how many people are impacted. So if it's a really complex change, like we have to move our entire house to a new country, change schools, change friends, that's obviously a very complex that impacts the whole family, big personal impact, and depending on the time frame would be impactful as well. So think overall as your family, and consider everything that's going on. If you're considering something new in your family, like say, oh, I want my son to learn how to speak Spanish. It may not be a good time to schedule that during his first year of kindergarten in elementary school, which I did, which was a mistake. It was his first year in school, and I'd read all this literature about your children need to learn a foreign language before they turn, I think like 6, it must have been. So I was like, oh, I have to get him into a foreign language. But it was just too much for him. It was in a new school, it was kindergarten, and he was exhausted. So big mistake. So think about everything that's going on in your family and see if you can move things around to a better time to help them have change capacity. So let's just look at a few illustrations here. So this gentleman, he's in his chair, he's got his sneakers on, he's looking out the window, he looks pretty relaxed. It looks like he could take on a few more things. So we call that he would have change capability, so he's able to do something else. We look at this other picture, this could have been me last year. You're trying to work, your kids are home, trying to feed them breakfast. There's a lot going on. It doesn't look like, this person could take on anything else. And we call that change saturation. So just keep that in mind as change is going on. And I think all of us have been a bit change saturated because of COVID. So I just encourage people to give themselves a little more space and time to work through things, because we've gone through a lot in this last couple of years. So now let's talk through how do we support people through change. And one of the change management models that's actually mentioned in the PMBOK is the ADKAR model from ProSci. And it talks through how we can support people through change, and as they go through transitions, the different phases that they can go through as they do that. So we're going to relate this to a little kid learning how to ride his bike and what he needs to go through to be able to adopt that change. So the first thing that this little boy needs to be able to do is he needs to be able to be aware of the need to change. He needs to know that there's a thing called a bicycle and that he needs to learn how to ride it to be able to ride a bike. And he also has to have a desire to do it in order to actually do the work. So he has to want to ride his bike. And one way, if sort of there's low desire for one of your family members to do something, is a way you can encourage that, is encourage buy-in by involving them early and get them involved in the planning process. Like if you're doing a move, and your kids don't want to do it, to encourage that desire, ask for their input into, the neighborhoods that you're looking at, or, the color of their bedroom, help them pick out the paint or help them pick out new activities. So help them, involve them in the process, and that can involve their buy-in and more acceptance of the change. The other one is with them, what's in it for me? So communicate the benefits to them. If they're not enthusiastic about the move, let them know that, your new job will provide more financial resources for the family. You'll be closer to your grandparents and you'll get to spend more time with them. So tell them on the benefits, but also be clear that there'll be downfalls. It'll be difficult leaving your new friends, and, we'll meet some new people, but just be transparent with them and help them talk through those different pros and cons of the move. So then the next part is the knowledge of how to change. So this father is providing his son the knowledge of how to ride the bike, because even though if you have the awareness and the desire, if you don't know how to, you won't be able to. But beyond that, there's also the ability to make the change. Like if this little boy's feet didn't reach the pedals, he wouldn't be able to ride his bike. If he didn't have, the coordination and muscles in his legs, he wouldn't be able to ride the bike. So for our kids, we just also need to think, are they ready for this change? Are they able to do it even? So just keep that in mind, the age of your child and their general capabilities. Are they able to adopt these changes? And the last step is the reinforcement to sustain the change. And that's practice. So he needs to practice riding his bike to be able to do it. So if he just learned how to ride his bike once, didn't ride it for 2 months, he probably wouldn't be able to ride it when he gets back on his bike. So that's the last step to make sure that change is, they keep the change. So it's also interesting, you can sort of go up and down this model. And one example was for my son, when he was learning to ride his bike, he was super excited to ride his bike. All his friends in the neighborhood were riding it. They were a year older than him, so they were a little further along. He really wanted to ride his bike. He had his training wheels on. We were teaching him how to do it. And he wanted to take his training wheels off. And we're kind of like, yeah, okay, all right, let's try it. So he was like, yeah, I can do it. It'll be fine. Let's go. So we took him off and he just couldn't do it. He just wasn't coordinated enough to stay upright. He was a year younger than the other kids and he just couldn't do it. So he was stuck on ability. He just wasn't able to do it. So we had to go back up to knowledge, train him, practice, and then eventually he was able to ride his bike. So if you're ever going through change with your family, this model, this ADKAR model, is really helpful to think back if you're getting resistance in a certain area, or if they seem like they're not able to make a change, think through where they are in this model and where you can support them. Like, what can you do? Either support them, emotionally with the desire, or support them functionally with teaching them how to physically ride the bike. So this is a great model to keep in mind and just refer to as your family's going through a different change. So these are top tips for creating family champions. First, create that intentional family mission and your core values, so you know that North Star that you're going to and you can refer back to. encourage teamwork with activities and regular communication through those family meetings, and then support family members emotionally and functionally. So now I'm going to talk about how to stop feeling overwhelmed and focus on your priorities. And we're going to talk about constraints, which is my favorite project management theory, and how we're all limited in our abilities of what we can get done. So project management, it's scope, time, and cost are our limits. It's that triangle that we refer to so much. And I'm going to apply that to families and how we can use that methodology to create a realistic family schedule. But first, before we do that, we need to talk about a stop sign. Because when you think about constraints, it's basically talking about limits, right? And what's stopping us from doing certain things. We can all be stopped by budget. We can all be stopped by time. We can all be stopped by, the amount of work that needs to be done. And at work, we manage to these every day. But I think culturally, at least in the States, we're always talking about, oh, how much more can I get done? How much more can I fit into my schedule? How many more activities can I get my kid into? And it can lead to burnout. It can lead to strained family relationships. So I think as we think back to that overall family mission we talked about at the beginning, this constraints theory helps us protect that and think about what's realistic for our family schedule. So what I've done here is I've taken scope, time, and cost, and I've sort of expanded on Harold Kersner's work where he had identified more constraints to a project, and I've applied it to families. So this is a stop sign, and this is what I see as the constraints impacting a family. You see time and budget at the top, and budget is your family's budget. The ones on the sides are sort of the scope, which is the work of a family. You have the parents' working career. You've got the children's education that I think of as work. You've got family-related work, which is all the work around the house, doing the dishes, laundry, vacuuming, etc. And then you've got extracurricular activities and hobbies. And then at the bottom, you've got quality of life, which is like family time, vacation time, and health and safety, exercise, etc., taking care of your health. So this is the overall picture that I see for families. And what happens if you exceed that stop sign? It's like a bubble bursting. It's like your balloon bursting because it's just too much. So if we exceed that stop sign, things go wrong, right? We can be stressed out. We can be burned out. We can have fights with our spouse. The kids can get grumpy. We can have health issues. So there are consequences to exceeding that stop sign. Our quality of life can go down. So I think we need to be really thoughtful about how we spend our time and to prevent that in the future. So one way to think about this is think about your family plan in the middle of the stop sign. And what size do you want it to be? Do you want it maxed out to the edges of the stop sign where you have no extra time at all? Or do you want a little white space or buffer in your schedule so that you have more free time in the white spaces on scheduled time? And this was actually an idea that I got from my very wise mother-in-law who came to visit from Wisconsin when my husband and I, this was before we were parents, and, we both had two very busy jobs and long commutes, and we were just very busy all the time. And she said to me, she's like, Hilary, I wish you and Jeff had more white space in your schedule. I was kind of like, what's that? And it was just a very wise, thoughtful comment that, you're so busy and you don't have much downtime, and you can build that into your schedule. And the way we build that into the schedule is considering all these different things and how we can move them around in a way that makes sense. So one way that's useful to think about them is what's more flexible and what's more inflexible. So quality of life and health and safety are more flexible. And those are usually the first things that go when things are busy. So when I'm busy at work, I usually see my family less because I'm spending more hours on work, and I probably sleep less because I'm doing more work. So that's usually the first thing to go. And I think it's important to be conscious of that. So yeah, you can make that choice that, okay, I'm going to do that. but we just need to be cognizant that, yeah, there are consequences to that, and that can only last so long before we start seeing the effects in terms of, maybe health issues or family relationships declining. So those are more flexible. The more inflexible ones are time and budget. Those are usually harder to impact. So the ones in the middle are the ones I'd like to focus on today in terms of how could you modify your schedule if it's just too much and your water balloon has burst. In terms of parents' work and career, children's education, family-related work, which is all the work around the house, and then extracurricular activities and hobbies. What can we move around to make things work? So the way I like to think about this is like a seesaw. So you have workload on the top and you have resources to help. So, in project management, if someone wants to add an enhancement to our project, we're like, oh, that'll be phase 2, right? We just put it off. We're like putting off the work. So it's similar at home. Is there any work that you can put off or do later? Do we really need to, renovate the kitchen right now? Let's put it off. We've got too much going on. So how can you decrease that workload? For me, I've made a decision to work part-time. That works for us because we've got other things going on. Part of my family circle is I have an aging mother who needs support. So I spend some of my time doing that. And my son and I have a lot of food allergies. So that's a significant amount of time managing those and preparing a lot of that food. So those are things that impact my family circle that I need to manage. And everyone's stop sign is going to look different, right? Because our situation's different. So you can accommodate this to think through how is your situation different? So how can you decrease that overall workload so everything fits? And then are there any resources that you can add to help? So are there relatives that can help with the kids? Or can you bring in services to help at home? Do you want to bring in a housekeeper to help with the house cleaning or some of those family services? Do you want to, get groceries delivered instead of having to go to the grocery store? So sort of think of how you can move things around and what adjustments you can make to make your family circle a little more manageable. And then once you've done that, I want you to do an in and out of family plan list and write it down. So basically this is your in scope and out of scope list for your family. So we do this at work. We write, okay, this is in scope of the project and this is out of scope for the project. So everyone is crystal clear on what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. So, in your family plan, if you want to really focus on your quality of life, you're going to say, okay, we're going to do one family activity per week. We're going to do family dinner 3 times together a week. We're going to use a house cleaner and get our groceries delivered to cut down on that family related work so we can spend time on other things. And we're going to take 2 family vacations a year. So that's in the plan that we're committed to. But what's out of the plan to make that happen? So if we want to have family dinner 3 times together a week, our kids can't be doing activities every night. So we're going to say only our child are going to do 1 activity per week. Or, if we want to do something together as a family once a week, our parents can't volunteer more than once a month. So for me, I signed up for the Parent Teacher Association this year, which was another mistake I shouldn't have. And it was a lot more time consuming than I thought. So next year, PTA is off my family plan, even though they wanted me to come back. So, so you just have to think about what works for you, write it down, post it, so you know exactly what you're committing to. And some feedback I've got is one mom did this and she committed to, I'm not going to go to more than 1 school meeting a semester. She got a call from school and they said, oh, we haven't seen you for a while. We'd love to see you come to one of the school meetings. And she thought of her list that she had posted and she politely declined because she's like, I didn't commit to that. I have other things going on. So it's a good reminder and it's a good way to keep yourself and your family accountable when you get those requests that would be easy to say yes to. And just remember that you have other things planned and you've decided to use your time in a different way. So top tips to focus on your priorities, recognize those limits impacting your family, and everyone's limits are going to be different and your stop sign is going to be different. Make those desired changes by either adding the resources to help or decreasing the workload or deprioritizing the environment. But just a caution, only deprioritize quality of life for so long. That's more of a short-term fix. And then identify those items that are in and out of your family plan and post them somewhere so that you're reminded of and can be refreshed if you get some requests that come in. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to proactively manage risk, because it has been a risky world out there, and how can we be proactive and be ready for things that come towards us. And we've been living in a very high risk environment with COVID. And I don't know if you felt this, but you feel like you kind of have to do a risk assessment for every situation you're going into. And we can do this in our families too. And I've heard a lot of people are just saying, I'm exhausted by having to constantly evaluate the risk of different situations. I mean, hopefully that things are getting better, but there's ways that we can use this tool beyond COVID to help us manage our families and be prepared. So first, let's talk about risk as defined by the PMBOK. It's an uncertain event that could even have a positive effect or a negative effect that we'll focus more on now on a project. So our project is a family that we're considering in this context. And we're going to talk about what are those things that could happen that could affect our family. So as you know, as project managers, there are many different types of risks that can impact your projects at work. These are the types of risks that are more categorized to risks at home. So schedule, anything that impacts timing, like calendar deadlines. So that could be last minute requests from work that impact your family time or that you need to work late on, or a caregiver who's running late, which is, every parent's stress. Or a babysitter that calls off. Budget, things that affect your finances, like an unexpected expense, like a car expense. This could be a house or a car repair, or even a financial gift that has a positive effect on the budget. What do you want to do if you get an inheritance? Think about that in advance to align with your spouse. Performance, and that's things that impact quality levels in terms of school, work, quality of life, health and safety. So that could be an illness, like what are the risks of someone getting COVID, or poor school grades. So these are the different types of risks out there. And there are a lot of risks. This could very easily be a very dark conversation, but let's first think about these risks in general. We're going to categorize them so we have a better idea of what to address and what not to address, because we don't need to address everything. So when we're thinking about all the different risks out there that could impact our family, we need to think of the strength or magnitude of the effect. So an asteroid hitting Earth would obviously have a very big impact, right? It could, knock us all out. However, the probability of it happening is pretty low. So that's not necessarily something that we have to get ready for. So it's important to think through with your partner. And this is one phase where I recommend just talking with your partner with it first before you involve the kids, or you don't necessarily need to involve your kids with this one because it can be a little scary for them. And just talk through the different risks that can impact your family, and then talk through how to get ready for them. So ways to have that conversation with your partner, it's basically what if. What could go wrong with our schedule or budget? What could negatively impact our family's quality of life, our work, our kids' education, or our health and safety? Like, what if? What could go wrong? And then once you've identified what could go wrong, you're going to talk through what can we do about it and what's the best way to address it. And there's a more formal way to do that, because I'm a project manager. I love a template. So you're going to talk about the risks, rate their impact and likelihood, and then you're going to come up with what your response is. And then if you're geeky, you can keep it on a project management plan like me, and you can talk about it regularly. So here are some examples. So we have a very trusty Toyota RAV4 that has 155,000 miles on it, and it is on its last legs. Even our mechanic has told us to stop putting money into it. But we also know that cars are really hard to come by right now, and they're incredibly expensive. So our risk, which when I wrote this, it was probably medium. It's probably high now that our car could die at any moment. And the likelihood, that it's going to happen is pretty high. The impact, would be significant. But what our strategy is we're going to invest in repairs to keep the car running as long as possible, and we're going to save money for a replacement vehicle when that occurs. So that's a risk that is in our family. So another risk is, what if I need to quarantine my son? What if he's exposed and he can't go to school and he needs to stay home for 10 days? And his school actually shut down a few months ago, and he was home doing remote school for about 2 weeks. So high impact to our daily schedule. And what can we do to get ready for that? Okay, I can talk to my boss about, any flexible scheduling. I can talk to my husband about how can we adjust our schedule so we can each take different parts of the day. Are there relatives that can help? Is there a daycare facility that can help them with the school? What can you do? And probably the biggest risk that parents have to deal with is childcare, right? What if that babysitter calls in sick? What if the childcare for the day falls through? What are you going to do if you need a backup childcare option? So how can you get ready for that? Because it's stressful. When something happens, if your childcare provider calls out sick, what are your options? Or when are you going to have to take off work, or is there something else that you can do? So what we were able to do is I actually had a few childcare providers for my son. And so I had backups. If one got sick, the other could cover. And what we do now is we've signed up with the childcare facility for drop-in childcare. So should we need childcare, we can just drop them off and we call and let them know. But that took some preparation, right? We had to select the childcare facility that we were comfortable with. That took actually several tries. We had to review the contract, sign the contract, take my son on a tour so he was comfortable, and then we were ready should the need exist. So this takes some planning and preparation to get ready. So this is all of what this risk management planning is about. Identify the things that could have a significant impact on your family that are likely to happen, and then get ready for them. Think through what you need to do, get that work done in advance, and then you're ready when that happens. And it decreases your stress levels and your kids at the same time. Another risk for busy parents is that you feel disconnected from each other. You're not really able to connect as husband and wife anymore. So what can you do about that? That's a risk to your marriage. So one thing you can do is you can decide to do monthly date nights, and that may require finding a babysitter, which can be challenging. So try to find a babysitter or someone who can watch your children, and then get that on the schedule. So those are some of the risks that you can do to address them and be ready if they happen. And here are the top tips. So think about those risks that can impact your family and your personal life. Come up with a proactive plan, and so you're ready as needed. And then revisit it. Things may change. Like for us, like one of our babysitters went to college and couldn't babysit anymore. We had to find a new one. Your childcare arrangements may change. So just think through anything new that comes up. You can even use this for teenagers and drug and alcohol use. Talk to them about it in advance and say, okay, what are you going to do if you go to a party and someone offers you drugs or alcohol? Or, what do you do if you go to a party and you get drunk? Like talk about it as a family and say, okay, call me, I'll give you a ride home. Or just talk about the consequences in advance. Just talk to your teenagers as they're going out and being more independent, and have this conversation with them. And you can help come up with scenarios in advance and help think them through. And then if something should occur, they can, you can put that into effect, and they'll understand, how you're going to support them through that as well. All right, so we're coming into the end here. And I know there are a lot of you that love Agile. So I'm going to talk about Agile now and focusing on what's most important. So in Agile, we like to focus on the people and how people are more important than process. And I think that's so important in talking about our families, right? We are not a factory. We are not a Fortune 500. We are a group of people, and we have to get stuff done. So I love that perspective, is that we're really focused on the people here. So one of my favorite, I have a lot of favorite quotes, but this one is, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. And who's our customer at home? It's our family, and it's all of us working together. And we all have input and we all have ideas. Obviously, it differs depending on the age of your children. But just to keep that in mind, it's not about, the best chore chart I can put up or the most amazing, spreadsheet that I can use with my kids. It's all about the people and our overall satisfaction. And it takes you back to that North Star of that family mission that you created at the beginning, and talk through as a group, okay, what do we want our family to feel like and to be like? Think back to that, and just make sure as you're doing these different things as a family that you're going back to that and you're achieving that goal. This is another one of my favorite quotes. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. Like, what don't you need to do at home? Like, you don't have to do everything all at once. I've trained in a professional culinary school, and I make burgers, tacos, and nuggets every week. Now is not the time in my life to be making, 3-course gourmet meals, which I could, but it's just not the right time. So I'm not doing that work right now. So just think through, what do you not need to do, so you can spend time on the thing that you want. So you can spend time with your kids, if that's what you want to be doing. So what doesn't need to be done? And then another one of my favorite quotes is this: create effective environments that foster joy. And I think the 2 key words are effective and joy. And we can do that, right? We can do that by involving the family, engaging them, and bringing them all together in the process, and having fun and celebrating. And this is a picture from Junkanoo that I'm learning about. And, I'm sure it's a big project to learn the dances and make the costumes and make sure everything's organized. But how can we make that fun and celebrate those little wins when our kids learn the first few dance steps, and celebrate the fun of the day? So these agile perspectives, I think, are really useful in terms of the family. And this is a graphic from my book where I sort of took these agile ideas and how they apply to families in general. So like family satisfaction, that's our main goal in the middle. That's the people that we're focused on. Those people over processes. And then in terms of, the goal is to communicate and collaborate together. Get your kids' input, get them involved, and then they'll have that buy-in that we talked about earlier, and they'll be more apt to participate in that project, like that moving project. Get them involved, and they'll be more apt to support that. And then, empower your people, empower your kids, especially your teenagers as they get older. We have to make this transition from sort of training them really closely and then gradually helping them launch. As they get older, empower them, bit by bit, so that they're able to take on more and more tasks. And then you can gradually step away and help them, give them the overall expectations of what you want them to do, and then let them handle the work. And then going back to what doesn't need to be done, still focus on, delivering what needs to be done as a family, but don't overcomplicate it. Don't make it, too much for your kids. I always say that the processes need to work for you and your kids. It can't be too complicated. Keep it simple. And then learn and change. Those family check-in meetings about how things are going are so useful to get feedback, develop those problem-solving skills in your kids, and get their input on how things are going. Like, ask them, how the transition to school went, and they can tell you, oh, it was just too much going on. I started a new sport and I started a new school, and they're like, so you can learn for next time. Okay, well, that was too much for them. And each kid is different. It's good to get the input of each child because each kid handled things a little bit differently, and what works for them and what things you want to tweak for next time that you can apply. And then celebrate those little wins, have dance parties, get cupcakes, write them a card for those little things that go well. Like my son got student of the week, and I was so proud of him. And so I went to the store and got him balloons and, greeted him when he got home from school. And just, take the time to celebrate those little moments before they pass by, because life happens pretty quickly. And just celebrate them. And then your kids will be more apt to participate and continue with those positive behaviors that you're trying to encourage. So here are top tips for being agile at home. Focus on the satisfaction of the entire family and set goals together. Empower the kids to learn and do the work. And, this philosophy is great, to equip them to become, adults and give them the skills they need to be successful. And keep it simple and celebrate those successes along the way and enjoy the time that we have together as a family. So that was the roller coaster of parenting and project management. So top tips to help you along your parenting journey are to create family champions, focus on your priorities, proactively manage risk, to be ready for it, to reduce stress, and focus on what's important, the people in your family. So this is all content from my book, Project Management for Parents. There's additional information in the book. There's tools and resources. There's activities you can do. The templates that you saw are in there. And then there's a whole bunch of chapters on getting organized and how you can streamline the work and assign the work. So that's under the resources page. And I'm also happy to offer a 33% book discount that you can get on my website by entering PMI discount on the payment screen, or you can get it at any of these major online retailers if you prefer. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the roller coaster of parenting.
You had mentioned earlier about your son and, you know, his thought process. I find it difficult when it comes to people I interact with. Actually, I should say, you know, family and friends that don't think that way. You know, a lot of them kind of throw caution to the wind with their daily lives, and you know that's absolutely fine. But when it now comes time to organize or do an event together, it's a struggle. And to me, I find that if it's taught around a young age, they get to carry that throughout life. My question is, how do you deal with people that are older who haven't had that guidance to think in that manner, which is not so much project management, but using ways on how to kind of plan out your day, plan out, you know, events, plan out your life. How do you deal with them when you have to work with them? And do you suggest reading or tools that they take away after your interaction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this group probably deals with this a lot, right? Because we're the professional planners. And I get that a lot. You know, I'm sort of like the one who's organizing things with friends and family, and, you know, because, you know, I'm just good at it and that's what I do. But it can be frustrating when other people aren't. So I think what those techniques of getting buy-in and input early help, like instead of coming out with the idea and just trying to sort of roll it out, sort of engage them in that conversation to try to get their input and their buy-in, to try to get them involved in the process, and they'll be more apt to participate as a first step. And then, you know, I remember organizing my sister's baby shower, and I would just offer, like, I would just offer to, like, okay, well, let's have a call. Let's get on a call and talk about it. And I would sort of set up a bit of a structure, right? Okay, well, let's have 2 calls to plan for your baby shower. And then, you know, would you like me to send out a little recap of the meeting? So I kind of take on more of those planning things of myself. And then I see where other people can take on some of those behaviors. Like, oh, I see you're, you know, really good at shopping. Will you go pick this up? So, you know, I sort of identify what people are naturally good at and see if they can sort of take on some of that work, so it doesn't all, you know, fall on me, and get them involved early. And I find a lot of people appreciate it because they just don't have that skill set, and they appreciate that organizational piece. But, you know, it's also important that to make sure to get them involved as possible, so that, you know, you're not the one doing everything.
Thank you very much.
I got one. If I could ask a question. So Hilary, yeah, great presentation. Love it. You know, one that jumped right out at me was AdCar. How can I have not used AdCar in my day-to-day, right? But so that was great. Agile principles all the way. I really liked your presentation. Definitely, it was illuminating. But I got one for you.
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Hit me.
Proactively managing risk. Now let's go through this. Now let's see. If I'm talking to a teenager and I'm doing the what if, what about this, what about that? You know, you're gonna get some eye rolls.
Right.
Then if I'm talking to my 8-year-old and I'm talking down here, what if, then I might scare her into not even trying to begin with.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So do we have exercises in this book or any kind of backdrop to kind of scale this properly?
Right. Yeah. So I would stay away from the 8-year-old because I think they're just too young. We don't want to scare them, right? We would sort of like manage that risk for them on the back end and just have that conversation with your partner on what do we need to manage for them. For the teenager, obviously they're out in the world, they're experiencing different things. They can be more of that one-on-one conversation. And in the book, it specifically talks about teenagers. And if I remember correctly, I think it's alcohol use or drug use. So I specifically provide an example around that. And yes, there is a little template to talk about, logging your risk and having that conversation. So yeah, that's in there. But yeah, definitely make it age appropriate. And every kid's different. Like my son gets scared, watching certain movies that we don't think are scary, and he's like extra sensitive. And other kids are like, yeah, whatever, it didn't scare me at all. So just keep your individual child in mind and what they can handle and what they can't.
Awesome. And last departing shot there. Have you come across any apps or anything that could have them download for time management, time blocking, chunking, anything like that?
Yeah, for kids.
Yeah.
So there's one, I think it's called Habitica. And it's like gamification for tasks for kids that I've heard good feedback on from like middle school, high schoolers that they like. There's a whole list of them in my book in the chapters, like all the different apps out there. I can't remember them off the top of my head. So yeah, there's a whole slew of them out there for that. And then just in terms of family planning, I'm a big proponent for shared family calendars on apps, which are super useful. Like we use Cozy, it's on my phone. And I can enter activities and my husband can enter activities. And it's a great way to keep track of your family schedule. I've got it right here. And you can just see, what's going on. I don't know if you can see this, but, it's got a calendar and I can just pull it up. I'm taking the dog to the vet at 8 tomorrow and my husband has physical therapy at 12. So I can see what he's got. He can see what I got. And then you can assign it to individuals. And that's super helpful.
Nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Anybody else? And I would just say, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. I know at work, we use really complicated, we've got 7,000 tasks or whatever going on. Just really keep in mind your kids. For little kids, visual is good. Like on my son's chore chart, I've got a picture, of a bed and a picture of his trumpet for trumpet practice and a picture of a book for homework. So, visually it helps. And also think about, how do your kids learn? Like my son's not very good at listening. He's better at visual. So if he can see it, it makes more sense to him than me just telling it. And for him, he's like, Mom, you've told me to do too many things at once. Like, just tell me one thing at a time. So think about how your kid learns best, and each kid is a little different. And then tailor it to them. Like, are they tactile? Do they like to move things? Or like, do they want to move a magnet from one thing to the other to make them, accomplishment? Do they want to check it off the list? Or do they just want to say they're done? I've seen cute ones where they're like little jars and, you've got the chore on like a pencil or a clothespin and you move it from, to do to done. So you can just think about different ways, are they more tactile and hands-on that your kid learns and what you can do to organize their chores.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I would like to make a comment and ask Hilary a question. Hilary, I have a 10-year-old daughter that I've been homeschooling now for almost 2 years. This year, she started 5th grade and I started to teach her Scrum and Agile. And so she she's learning Scrum. We have daily stand-ups and we also have sprint planning. We do retrospectives after our 4-week sprint. And she has really taken on a liking to the retrospective of it because she always brings up when I violate anything in our working agreement. So from day one, we established a working agreement. And everything that I do that's breaking our working agreement, She does not fail to mention it at the retrospective. She looks forward to the retrospective where she could call out everything that I've done wrong for the past 4 weeks. She was like, you know, you're not supposed to be taking work phone calls during school. You're not supposed to be on your phone. You're not supposed to be answering emails.
I'm laughing, Andrew, because my son would do the exact same thing. He's 10. It's like the same.
And when I tell my colleagues about it, they're like, you know, that just shows you that you're teaching her Scrum really well, that she's understanding it really well, and she knows how to apply it. And so my question is, do you think a 10-year-old is too early for them to grasp project management principles?
No, I think, well, she's already understanding it and embracing it. I think we just need to distill it down, right? We're not going to hit them with like, okay, go and put into Microsoft Project, you know, just those essential concepts, like, you know, the retrospective, or just a check-in meeting, or, you know, what are we agreeing to? Like, you know, what are our guidelines for getting our work done? We just need to simplify it for them. You know, the one thing, you know, for that age group that I've noticed with my son is just like, you know, breaking it down into smaller pieces for them and not hitting them with too much at once, because my son just can't calculate that many things going on at the same time. So yeah, I don't think they're too young at all. We just need to be thoughtful on how we apply it, and just, you know, think about the bigger concepts in general, and, you know, how they can use them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree, because I'm seeing it and how it's benefiting her in her schoolwork with her chores. And as I read through your book, I'm finding that some of the tips and principles that you stated, that we actually already are doing those with the chore chart and our Kanban board. And so, you know, I'm just looking at the ones that we haven't thought about from your book and how we're going to incorporate those. And I think a key thing that you talked about is having that balance, you know, and realizing the constraints, because sometimes I think we try to do so much, especially as moms. Moms especially, I think we take on a little bit too much. We try to, you know, try to be working moms, homeschooling moms, you know, everything to everyone, and then we crash.
Yeah, we can only do it for so long.
Yeah, we neglect self. You know, we take care of ourselves when it's at the end, when we have no choice.
Yeah.
So a good thing that you spoke about is having that right balance. And I think that's very important to everyone, to know that there's only so much you can do, so many hours in a day, and to maximize productivity versus just being busy. You know, we could fill up our schedules with busy work, but being productive is the key.
Yeah.
And do we have any more questions for Hilary?
Yeah, I would just like to comment. I like to say that no matter how organized we are, if you have too much going on, it's still too much, right?
Yes.
So we just need to be careful. Like, I think as project managers, we're very task focused, and we're very get it done focused. And I need to sort of catch myself and be like, look, Hilary, it's just too much. You need to scale it back, and just keep that balance in mind. Because for me, if I do too much, you know, I end up with some health issue, you know, like something goes wrong, and it's my body telling me, look, you need to slow down and take it easy, because it's just too much. So yeah, it's important. We got to take care of ourselves.
And I love how you incorporate not only traditional project management in this book, but you also brought in Agile and a few Agile frameworks and concepts and strategies. And when you talk about managing work, you know, that's Kanban and having WIP limits and knowing what you could pull in and recognizing when you at your max. So that's something that's in this book, guys. So make sure you take advantage of the discount code and secure your copy of Hilary's book. She has it on the screen. I saw where someone in the chat said that they're going to purchase that book as soon as we leave, and Kelly is showing her book. So if we don't have any more questions, we'd just like to take a quick minute for a photo.
Can I quickly ask one more question?
Sure, you can.
Yeah, this is Lawrence from Toronto. Hilary, very good presentation. So I'm in the course of writing a book on project management. I just want to ask you, what are your challenges when you're writing your book or during the course of the book project? If you can share a little bit of it, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Well, time, I guess, is tricky. You know, just having the focused time to write. Yeah, I would say focus time to write. I'd recommend getting feedback early, get input from people to read your draft, just to see if you're heading in the right direction. Because I got some good feedback early that sort of redirected me in how I was writing the book to make it more useful. Other challenges, publishing is hard. I was very lucky to find a publisher. So just the publishing world is complicated. There are lots of different ways you can go to publish a book. So for me, that was like a whole nother education. And then there's the whole marketing aspect, which is a whole nother education. So it's kind of like a side career. I don't know if you have a background in marketing or social media or any of that. I did not. Or publishing. So I just had to learn a lot about that profession and how to navigate it as well. But if you're doing nonfiction, you can get a publisher before it's finished. If you're doing, well, I assume it's nonfiction. If it's fiction, you need to finish it first. So nonfiction is a little easier to start pitching it to publishers early before you actually finish the manuscript.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been looking at this in the last 4 to 6 years while I was doing my postgraduate, my second postgraduate in Minnesota. There's a publishing house that I'm looking at, but I might be shifting waves based on that. That's the area I'm having challenges. And maybe I'll link up with you, connect with you.
Yeah, please do. I have my LinkedIn. You can find me. I'm under Hilary Kinney PMP. So just reach out to me, link up. I'd be happy to link up with any of you.
Thank you.
Project Managers Unite.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks to Andre.
And I do have my symbol in the background, so just take notice of that.
I know.
So if we have everyone who wants to be on camera is on camera. Omar is gonna snap a quick shot.
Quick minute.
I think Omar got it. Omar, you got it?
No. Give me a minute.
Nope. A second more. Anyone else wants to come on camera for a quick photo that goes on our social media?
Oh, cool. Okay. 1, 2, and done.
Thank you.
Kelly and Andrea, I love your books.
Omar always takes one picture, so I hope that's a good picture, Omar. And he's saying yes.
Yep, we're good to go.
Omar just checked the picture. Okay, so Omar, I did see you drop the SAU link in the chat. By attending this meetup, you are eligible to claim 1 SAU and 1 PDU. The PDU, you have to self-submit. So just put in the name Bahamas Agile Project Management Community, the URL that you use to access this meetup, and just claim 1 PDU. And the SAU, once you sign into your Scrum Alliance dashboard and then you click on the link, it's going to automatically apply to your account. So, Omar, would you like to wrap us up and thank our speaker and our attendees?
Yes, ma'am. Well, as Andrea said, this is the final minutes of our session. Thank you all for coming. Like we've said before, please spread the word. We are a small community, but we really enjoy bringing very important topics to everybody. Please bring a friend, spread the word. And if there's anything that you think we can change or even improve, please let us know. Our goal, like everything, is to keep being better and being a better version of ourselves. So your feedback is very welcome. Thank you very much. Hope you all have a good night and have a good weekend as well.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much, Hilary.
Good night. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.